All right, we're COMP308, and even though this lesson in front of us looks like Lesson 3, Part 1, it's really Week 4, Lesson 4, Part 2. And we, in the first part of this lesson, we talked about design, and we looked at a few successful sites on the awards website. So see Part 1 for that. Part 2, we're going to be talking about a little bit of jQuery and some technologies we can use to make our life easier when it comes to working with the web. So I'm just going to start this off, but I'm going to work hand in hand with this one and Visual Studio as I intercut between the two. So let's talk about a little bit about jQuery and what the hell jQuery is anyway, this jQuery stuff. Okay, again, if you don't know anything about jQuery, it's an open source JavaScript library, right, that adds functionality to JavaScript. So it helps us with things like selectors and navigating the DOM, the document object model, a little bit more. From a breakdown perspective, it really hits these 8 sections. All right, so it has some really cool core functionality in terms of jQuery functions that are built into the jQuery API. Helps us with selection and traversal of the DOM, right? How we manipulate CSS, and it's very CSS-like. jQuery, you'll notice, is the same way we use CSS selectors is the same way we do selections for jQuery. And that's what makes it so powerful, because if you know CSS, then jQuery, the way we select things with jQuery should be known to you as well. You already know it, in fact, right? How it handles events, again, from the way it works with creates new event handlers and the way it works with the DOM and everything else. It enhances the event handling. Some different effects. You can download some modules for animation and so on with jQuery UI, and actually has some built-in stuff for basic animations and so on. One thing it really does well, and I'm going to talk about this as well maybe next day, like tomorrow if I can, is Ajax. And we're going to talk about Ajax because one of the things that make our sites more responsive or more dynamic, almost like this whole idea of this rich internet application framework, is Ajax. How do we work with Ajax in order for us to replace content on the page, right, without reloading or going to a new page? And we use Ajax a lot for different frameworks. Like, for example, if you look at jQuery Mobile, it uses Ajax. And there's a lot of other frameworks that use Ajax to swap in and out, swap text in and out of, or content, not just text, in and out of a web page. And it's also extensible and has a really cool user interface stuff that allows us to do things like sliders and controls and progress bars and accordions. And that's the UI, jQuery UI, that comes with a separate plugin for jQuery. So that's what it does for us. Where can you get it? So one of them is you can get it from the Content Delivery Network. And again, there's some controversy. There used to be, hey, should I download my files for jQuery locally on my system, or should I use the Content Delivery Network, the CDN? And you might see that. By the way, the CDN is also available for other APIs, not just jQuery. For example, Create.js, if you were doing the web game stuff with me in 397, then there is a Content Delivery Network for that as well. You don't have to use the downloadable libraries. Yes?
So CDN, you just reference it?
Yeah. And here's an example of what it would look like. So again, if you see that if I have to go to my server, as an example, and if I download my, this is the advantage of it. Here's an example of where I would download my content locally on my server. So let's say you have a school server and you put your local libraries here. Well, then each of the single computers would have to go to this server and they would load up each time. So if you're using jQuery, and if it's a local copy, right, and if it's different than the CDN, the things that we already have in our browser, the browser would have to re-download jQuery from your site, so you make your site a little slower, actually. Whereas if you go to the CDN, you have many servers, and they all use the same copy of jQuery, right? So once you've downloaded it once, and if every other server in this delivery network, if they use the same copy of jQuery, and you've already got it on your site, on your browser, it's cached in your browser, right? Then downloading it would be very quickly. Your site would work much quicker than it would if it was local. The other thing I'm just giving you the pros. Here's another pro for Content Delivery Network. If you target the latest copy of jQuery, you'll get all the latest features of jQuery. So if it gets updated, if there's bugs or whatever, and you're targeting the CDN, all the bug fixes that happen. If you target the general version of the jQuery framework, not a specific version on the CDN, then when it gets fixed, yours gets fixed. On the downside, let's look at cons. So the cons are, if there's new features and you targeted certain features using jQuery, and now they're gone because the new version of jQuery doesn't have those features, or they've been deprecated, as an example, you may have undesirable or unknown effects happen to you. And this is why some people go with this solution here, this local controllable version of jQuery that you can make sure that it's going to be delivering your content and your features according to what you planned, right? There's a nice mix between the two that you can use. You use this one for development, right? And then what you do is you switch to this one for testing before you go into production. And when you know that they're the same, you can hook into one that's the same version as the one that you have, downloaded locally, but it's on the content delivery network. Now, some people say, well, what if the content delivery network goes down? Does that mean my site will stop functioning? Well, like I said to you before, we've talked about this, I think. The content delivery network is hosted by people like Google and Microsoft. So if they go down, it's okay for your site to go down, right? And here's some links for the content delivery network. But if you wanted to find these, here's, for example, jQuery's CDN, code.jquery.com, and I'm just targeting one of the versions, jQuery-2.1.3, right? So if I was to go in there, if I was to do it on my own, and if I said jQuery CDN on the Google page, I was trying to find this one of them. This is the one from jQuery, code.jquery.com, and if you notice, it gives you different versions, right? So this is actually the CDN. You can actually go here and link up to the CDN, and if this is 2. Whatever version, you can link into the uncompressed version, right? And you can also link into the minified version. And again, we talked about the difference between uncompressed and minified. Uncompressed, if you want to do some of your own development, then you'd use the uncompressed version. You might also use this for code hinting in Visual Studio and other frameworks, other IDEs. And the minified version is good from a speed perspective. It loads a little bit quicker because all the spaces and comments and everything else that's extraneous to the site goes away, and then you can load things up fairly quickly, right? So that's your jQuery. You can actually link into it this way. And actually, if you right-click and copy the link address, well, this would be the same link address that you put into your pages, just like we see here. So here's your script tag, right? So you just hook into the latest version. If you notice, if I was to do that, to go back to the site here, oops. If I go back to the site here and right-click, or just hover over it, it says 2.1.3, which is the latest version of jQuery. So that's one. I can also look into it from a Google has a hosted libraries page. So if I go there, and if I want to look at the hosted libraries or CDNs on Google, here are all the ones down here. There's Angular, Dojo, jQuery, jQuery Mobile, jQuery UI. So there's a lot of little links here, and this is what you would just take this code snippet here right from the Google website for 2.x version of jQuery as an example right here, and you drag and drop that or copy that into your development environment. And then you have the jQuery library, right? So that's Google, and there's others. I'm not going to go into the Microsoft one, but those are the big ones, right? So content delivery network. So if you hear a CDN, if you ever see CDN, any API, this is what it means. It means that you can get something that's online that's going to serve your library, whatever that API is, to your site, and it's going to do that online somewhere. Okay, so again, there's also jQuery UI. jQuery UI is a separate library from jQuery. So if I was to go to the jQuery site, just to see, we haven't even done that yet. So let's go to jQuery. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Just jQuery, I said. If I go to jQuery.com, it looks like this, right? So you've got a bunch of these little projects up here that jQuery kind of uses. This is the jQuery site itself, so you can download the jQuery library right here. There's two different versions of the library, the 1.x version and the 2.x version. If you've been working with the 1.x version, there's some incompatibility between that and the 2.x version, but if you're just starting off, you might as well go with the latest library. Here's jQuery UI, and it's basically some additional plugins, another library that requires jQuery itself, the jQuery library, to give additional functionality. Like, for example, accordion, like this whole accordion feature kind of set that you can get from jQuery, right, and so on. Now, funny enough, Foundation that we worked on last week, it requires jQuery as a framework, right? If you notice, jQuery is the first library that it requires, and then you put Foundation in. Why? Because some of these UI, these interfaces, are the same things that Foundation takes advantage of, the dialog interface, the menu, and so on. All this stuff is built into, a lot of it's built into Foundation. However, there's nothing that's wrong with using some of these UI elements. The challenge is some of them may be incompatible with some of the themes you have in Foundation from a responsive framework perspective. The one thing that's great about Foundation is it's fully responsive, right? So that's one of the things that it has, jQuery. There's also, for jQuery, the jQuery mobile project, which is a touch-optimized framework, right? Now, it's not responsive again. It's made specifically for mobile, right? So you would have to listen. You'd have to listen for what device is incoming. It's a different way of doing things, not necessarily a viewport size. And then when that device or viewport comes inbound, you serve up a different page for that device altogether. So you have a responsive framework. Some people do this too. It's a kind of a mix and match, right? Depending on how far you want to go from an adaptability perspective, right? For medium and large screens, they use Foundation, and then for small screens, they use a specific framework like Ratchet or jQuery Mobile, where they swap out the smaller pages and they just use this. And this actually serves up a different kind of interface altogether that's specifically made for the mobile size. So it solves a lot of the problems that Foundation can't solve. Like, for example, a fixed toolbar and those kinds of things for small screens, right? And this is, again, without any kind of, not a lot of JavaScript on your own. It uses HTML markup to do all the work, right? Which is great. I mean, it's like if you're not a developer, you can look like you have superpowers, right? Like that's what Foundation does for you too. Foundation makes you look like a really powerful designer, a person who knows what they're doing, right? Even if you're not. And same thing with jQuery. It does that too. So it gives you superpowers. So again, these are the few most common ones that they have. They have a couple of other ones that I'm not going to talk about today. QUnit for testing, and there's also Sizzle. But those three are the most common jQuery libraries. The first one, of course, being jQuery, and you require jQuery for the other two. And the other two, by the way, jQuery UI and jQuery Mobile, are incompatible. So if you were going to use features from jQuery UI and jQuery Mobile, you may get results that don't exactly meet with what you're looking for from a development perspective. And again, you can use JavaScript and CSS of your own to build it yourself. And if that's the case, then you might as well just use jQuery and go from there. So again, jQuery being the base library. Let's go back. Okay, so again, really good things that the plugins can do for you. Like, for example, the UI plugin does things like data validation, slideshows, and carousels. So if you wanted to do that and add that in, if you're making a basic jQuery site, not Foundation, and you wanted to use those other things, you could mix and match those in. So again, jQuery is really good at selectors and filters. All right, and what I mean by that is it has, if I was going to think about CSS or even Zen coding, the stuff we did with our Visual Studio, right? When I was starting to look at a tag name, if I want to target a tag name, like for example, div, that would be your tag name, your element, right? Well, then all you'd have to put in there is the type of tag name that you're targeting, as opposed to get element by tag name, right? Like you would have to put in for JavaScript, right? You could use the jQuery way of doing it. jQuery, when you use jQuery, you've got to use the $, as the way you start off the jQuery selector. So the $ is your power. That's almost like your magic symbol, if you will. Right? You use the $ with 2 parentheses and whatever the selector base is in here to select the element inside your website. Right? So if you go back, if I want to kind of hit an ID, right? Then I would put the ID inside my selector here and target it that way. How does it look? So here's all P tags, right? I'm basically targeting all paragraph tags up here. Here's all ID, any element with an ID of facts, FAQ, right? Here's all elements with a class of plus. I'm targeting. This is how I can target with jQuery. Again, jQuery you mix up with JavaScript. jQuery is JavaScript. It's just a subset of JavaScript, a library. Yes. Yeah. You do it. You do it in your JavaScript file. So in your JavaScript file, if you're going to target an element, if you're going to target that to do some kind of special effect, like some kind of button click or something like that, or you want to change an element, because jQuery, like JavaScript, you can traverse the DOM and swap out certain features. You can swap out content and all that kind of stuff, or maybe add content, right? That's what jQuery allows you. It's like a shorthand for JavaScript.
So, is there any like possible position that we have to add?
I'll go through it. I'll show it to you. There is. Here's some more examples. If I want to target all paragraph elements inside any other inside an ID tag with FAQs, right? All div elements that are adjacent, to H2 second headline elements. I can be very specific about how I can target different elements, not just by the type, but also by relationship. So here's an example of how I would use it. It's right at the bottom here, so it's hard for you to see, but it'd be the selector dot the method name and then some parameters. All right, that's how it would look for jQuery. And there's some common jQuery methods you could use. For example, if I want to know the getter for a selector, if I want to know what the text value is, as an example of an element, and that's, if you look at the DOM, remember it's all nodes in the DOM, right? I could use jQuery to target that text. So give me the text that's inside of this particular element. That's how you do it. Let's try it a little bit. So we don't have a lot of time, but I want to try and see how this works. We're gonna hit this again tomorrow when we talk a little bit more about jQuery. So I'm going to go into VMware, and my VMware, of course, is pulling up Visual Studio 2013, and I'm going to pull up a basic project here. I'm going to go into New Project. I'm not going to use a template here. I'm just going to go in and just create my new COMP308 and kind of lesson 4, sorry, and it's lesson 4, and I'll say JQ, just for jQuery, right? And I'm going to add this to GitHub, and I'm going to create a GitHub repository for it so you guys can follow along. And let me just do that now. While in the background, I'll do that. So I'll go to GitHub, and inside the GitHub repository, I'll do a new repo here, new repository. And in here, I'm going to put in the same kind of thing, COMP308, and then it's lesson 4, and then it's JQ. Right? Create my repository. I'm going to grab my URI, and then from there, I'm going to go in and connect it to GitHub, just like we normally do. So I'm going to go in here and say created, if I can type, created basic project structure. So, and I'm going to do a commit, and then from there, I'm going to go into unsync commits and copy in my URI and publish it to GitHub. So now I'm connected. And now again, I would create my basic stuff here, right? I want to put together some basic site structure you've seen before. So I'm going to put in my CSS. And I'm going to do this fairly quickly, guys, so just bear with me while I do such a thing. And I'll put in my scripts folder. And I'll also put in my assets folder here really quickly. And inside my assets folder, I'll put in maybe an images, like I showed you guys before. And inside my assets, I'll also put in a audio and one more. If I was going to do audio, I'd like to put in fonts because we haven't talked about custom fonts too much. I kind of hit them, but not really a lot. But you can put all that in here, and then of course a lib folder in my scripts. I'm going to create a new index.html file, and I'll call it index, of course. And in here, I'm going to make it adhere to the HTML standards and take this away. And put in lang is equal to English. And of course here inside my head of my document, I'm going to put in a meta tag with a character set of UTF-8, same kind of thing we've done before. And of course now we're talking about responsive, and I want to put in here meta tag with a name is equal to viewport, and of course a content is equal to width is equal to device width. So these are all basics that we're going to do here. And then in here I'm going to put a jQuery demo. jQuery demo for COMP308, and so that's there. And then of course we have some things in the head that we need. We need to put in a CSS document, and down here inside the body tag we're gonna have to put in something for JavaScript. So again, I've kind of put together my basic template before. Sorry, but I wanted to do it again for you guys just really quickly. So now I want to include my jQuery files, and I don't want to link to the CDN, but rather I want to download the file. So I'll go to jQuery really quickly, and I'm gonna follow the way to download. I'm gonna go down to download jQuery, and I want to download jQuery 2. whatever. And here's the compressed production version, or the uncompressed development jQuery. I want to download the uncompressed version for now. And here I do it, I keep it, and I've got this jQuery 2.1.3 in my downloads. And if I bring up my downloads and I search for it, jQuery, right, then it's going to bring up the latest version if I want. jQuery should bring up the latest version anyway. Got lots of them. So this is not a good way to filter. Let's just go back and look at my most recent files. Here it is. And I'm going to minimize. That was bad. Fail. And let me just drag and drop this into my lib folder. Here it is. And of course, one thing I do need is a scripts file. I'm going to add another script in there. So, not a new folder. Delete, Tom. I'm getting too fast for myself. I want to add in another script that's going to be of JavaScript type. Okay, and I'm going to call this app.js. Here's my app.js script. And in there, I want to definitely add a reference to the jQuery library, so I get a reference path to it, so I can do my code hinting. I covered that before, right? I also need to hook in my jQuery here, right, and my app.js underneath it. So those are the two things I definitely need to do. And here, I also need to probably create some kind of CSS file, right? So here I am with CSS and a new style sheet that's going to be app.css with kind of an empty body tag for now. So I've got all those basic things in here. And we set up our template really quickly. I'm going to go to my Team Explorer now and do a commit so we're up to date. So in any kind of untracked files, I want to make sure they're included. Added jQuery to project, right? As an example, I'll do another commit. I'll save everything, go into unsync commits, and sync. So now you have everything online, right, for this one. Okay, back into my index index page. I got everything that's the basis for what I need to do. The only thing I'm missing here is my CSS. I really haven't linked it in there, so I'll just do that now. And I'll save that again. And I'll go into my app.js, and this is where I start using my selectors. Now, I can't do any selection unless I have some kind of content here on this side. So let me add some content. So I'll go to div tag. I'll use my Zen coding. I'll make a div tag. Inside the div tag, first of all, the div tag is going to have an ID, right? And I'll make it have an ID of header. Again, I could have used a header tag for this as well, but I'm just using the ID to target it, right? And inside the div tag, I have a headline 1 tag. And alongside the headline 1 tag, I have a p tag with an ID of first dash paragraph, right? And if I want to make it go, I just hit tab. And of course, Zen coding makes it kind of appear, right? That's what we're doing. Inside my headline, it has maybe a hello world, right? And then inside my paragraph tag, I want to put some lorem ipsum text. So I'm going to say lorem 20, right, to add a little bit of text into my design, right? So I've got a bit of content, and I want to target my ID. Well, again, there's different ways of targeting this thing. If I go into my files here, let's create a function. I'm going to call this my main function, right, as an example, just like I normally would. And I want to kind of kick off my main function when I start off the body of my document. So I'm going to go on load, right? I want to hit my main function, right? And here's my main function inside here, right? So in here, I want to start targeting my jQuery, right? So this is where I'm going to start targeting my stuff. So I say $, open bracket, and once I do that, if you notice, it says selector and context, because that's what it says. Hey, define a local copy of jQuery. I've got this. I'm connected. I can see that I'm getting my code hinting, right? And so now I can target something like the selector that I'm looking at. So if I want to say, well, you know what? I want my div tag, right? I want to get in my div tag, or I want to look at my paragraph tag, and I want to get the text from all my paragraph, this one paragraph tag. So let's say my text, right? That's what I'm kind of looking at, and I want to. It's a getter. If I go back to my thing here, if you notice, I need to use the closed brackets because my getter looks like this, right? So I'm saying this is where my value is, and if I say var, right, para text, right, is equal to p text, so I'm using jQuery to get that, I can actually use the selector and get the text from inside the paragraph tag and put it inside this para text variable, and then from there, of course, I can just do a console.log, and I can throw in there para text, right? Here it is. So the power of jQuery allows me to do this one line as opposed to use document.getElementById and so on, right? So this is the para text, and I'm looking specifically at the text value. And if everything goes well, and if I launch this thing, then I should get hello world with a bit of this text. And inside if I go to my JavaScript console, if I've done things correctly, and it looks like I have not, right? Oh, there it is. So I'm getting this text that's inside my paragraph. I'm outputting it. This whole text is a string of text, right, that I am targeting with this command. Right? So I'm using my selector tag for P, paragraph tag, and I'm getting the text within the paragraph tag. jQuery. Right? And so again, very powerful shorthand language. We're going to spend more time using jQuery. I wanted to give you 2 seconds on how this would work. We're going to get more into it next day. So tomorrow we're going to go more into jQuery, and we're going to hit some Ajax as well. Okay? And we're going to stop it there for today.